Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative Podcast. This is the podcast where we have digital discussions in the worlds of pop culture, social media, sports, TV, film, everything really. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On Twitter, you know me as PD Beats. Season 6 of Orange is the New Black has recently launched, and a lot of drama, a lot of comedy. It had everything, and we're speaking to an actor from Orange is the New Black, where he is one of the COs. He plays CO Lee Dixon. We were speaking to Mike Houston. Mike, welcome to Popternative, man.
Oh, thanks, man. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. I talked about it right before we started the podcast. It was pretty cool that Lee Dixon had a little bigger role in some episodes this season, and you kind of got to get to know him a little bit more.
Yeah, it was fun to get a kind of a track where, we get to see Lee kind of deal with some of the ramifications of last season and the riot, and kind of what he has to go through to get through it. And it was a lot of fun to find out that I was going to be with James and Taryn, off the beaten path, because that's another thing. I've been on that. This will be my third season now, and we've never really left the prison system. So this was pretty cool to go do something completely different. And
it's interesting because you see a lot of COs, new COs, old COs come in, but your CEO, your character is kind of dealing with the whole Pennsatucky, escaping, going to going on the road trip. When did you find out that your character was going to go on that path and it wasn't just being in the prison? When did you kind of find out?
I found out pretty much just leading up to shooting, before they started shooting. We had known that they wanted to know that I was available because they had this road trip. That's all I knew. They said there's a road trip and you're involved in that road trip. And then, pretty much when I showed up to work is when I realized, I'm going on this road trip with Coates, with James. And then realized that, Pennsatucky was in the trunk the whole time. So they kept it kind of under wraps with me, but I did know I was leaving town for a bit. Yeah.
From your end, what's the reception been like of season 6? From my end, I mean, it's been people are kind of really curious. It's a lot of things kind of ended very depressing in the season finale. No spoilers there. A lot of eye-opening stuff there. What's been the reception from your end, Mike?
It's been really good. It's so different. Well, okay, so it's definitely more like the older seasons, that we were doing. Last season was such a crazy, interesting way of telling the story by putting it in 3 days, a full season over the time span of 3 days. So it's been a really cool reception to hear people buy back into the stories of these characters, taking the time with them, and also introducing us once again into a whole new arena with, going to Max from minimum security. Maximum security is a whole different monster in itself. They do a really good job, I think, of really just showing, again, how the prison system, especially here in the States, it's brutal. And, it's a survival mentality. So, but it's been, from what I've been told and the people I've spoken with, it's been well received.
Absolutely. You specifically before Orange is the New Black, because we also understand that people might also recognize you from Sneaky Pete as well, which is another show that you're on. When did you kind of decide that, I like to call actors and writing and directing storytelling. When did you kind of decide you wanted to become a storyteller, Mike?
I would probably say at a young age. I mean, I loved performing and doing plays and musicals, and probably, when I was in middle school to high school, probably around the grade 10, as you guys would say, grade 10, is when it really kind of clicked. And then, just by way of life, I went to college and did some other stuff and studied political science. And this wasn't really the the game plan until I left school, lived some years in Boston for a bit, and then realized, you know what, I really am passionate about this, and so I just want to stick to it.
Orange is the New Black is one of many shows that I enjoy because of the ensemble cast, and I kind of enjoy the new cast members coming in, and then and then like characters like Lee Dixon, who we see a little bit, but then we kind of see a different side. What is your opinion, even before you started with Orange is the New Black, on the ensemble cast, and do you think that type of cast is kind of not taking over, but becoming more prominent in the entertainment industry and in the TV industry?
That's a really great question. Yeah, I mean, I loved that show. I loved Orange before I started on it because of that, because it's an ensemble show. And especially as an actor, it's really exciting to get to work in ensemble work, because there's just so much to work off of, with so many different people, and having to know different stories and how your different feelings about each character. And so I definitely think that the ensemble show has really found its footing again. I mean, it's always been around.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We can go back all the way to the early 80s, but I think that to combine it into a comedy that has incredibly dramatic aspects to it, we're seeing more and more of that for sure. Where it's even now kind of evolved into these anthologies, things like American Horror Story is a great example. The shows on AMC that they do, where you have a season of a show like Fargo, even where you do a season of a show, and then the next season it's all new characters, but it's ensemble cast, but it's a whole new time and a new story, but with the same people. And I mean, American Horror Story, what those guys do, what Ryan Murphy does with that show is brilliant, because those actors get to play completely different people, every season.
Each season, yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. And I see the ensemble cast really taking the reins. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I love Orange is the New Black. For me, Orange is the New Black, I remember when it first came out, I didn't watch it right away, but then, people were talking about it. I think it was up to like season 3, and then I just binged all 3 seasons, and then I caught up.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I really appreciated that, and I think I got curious, and then the flashback aspect of it is amazing. The flashbacks, hoping maybe that they would... Maybe the next season, more CO flashbacks. I'd like that. We'd like to see what Lee Dixon has done this past.
I mean, it'd be a lot of fun to have a flashback, but I think the other important thing to always remember is really what the central focus of that program is. That show is about the relationships between these women and how they survive such horrendous conditions, and it's through their connection with each other. And then by learning where they came from, to give them each a story, because I think the whole purpose of it at the beginning, why Orange used that device, was to show that you think somebody, you think you have an idea of these people that are in prison, and you learn that, man, where they came from is not anywhere remotely close to what you maybe have assumed. That these are human beings, and they got caught up in some ridiculous situations, and I think Orange has just done such an amazing job of using the flashback to tell that part of the story. And again, you see that also on other shows, but I think the way Orange uses it is that it's really well done. And again, the main purpose, and to your point, some of the guards, it's important to know why they are who they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brad Hankey, who's a good friend of mine, who played Piscatella, when we found out that he was getting a flashback, that was exciting, because we felt like, yeah, you're one of the most difficult people in the show. The way he carries that character, and so it's like, how did he get to that place? Like, what creates that kind of person? And I think that's a great thing to do.
It's going to be kind of hard for you to answer this question, but try to think or narrow it down. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to enjoy about being part of the Orange is the New Black family and being on that show. Are there some things that you can kind of narrow down, though, Mike, that are your favorite things about working on that show? Or is it too hard?
No. I mean, and this might sound cliche, but it's truly the people that I get to work with. Mm-hmm. That group of actors, the talent and the resource that I get just by being there. I get to learn every single time I show up from different people. We're talking people that have been in this business for a very long time, people that have done really big things, and it's just exciting to be around people like that. And it is a family. Mm-hmm. It feels like a family when you come to work. And that being said, the other thing I love about it is the people off camera. Our entire crew, you see a lot of the same faces every year. And it just feels good when you get the call that you're going to come back and you get to go back to work. And when you show up, you see the same people you've seen for, 1 or 2 years. The creative teams are always super supportive. We get to work with really cool and interesting directors, because this show utilizes different directors for episodes. Some of the actors like Laura Prepon and Nick Sandow have directed episodes, and mm-hmm. that's incredibly exciting to be able to be directed by someone that you also are working with, who you've always admired as the actor. Then to be able to give yourself over to them as a director, it's really spectacular. But yeah, I would say, man, like it really is just joining an ensemble group. I've done other shows. And Sneaky Pete was actually pretty similar. Sneaky Pete was definitely, they have the two different worlds, but the world that I was in, we were together. We all worked hard together to tell this story. But I think that's what I'm really drawn to ensemble shows because of that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. A couple more questions. I like to sometimes I get similar responses, but when I have, actors and storytellers like yourself in the show, I always like to ask because, so misconceptions. I always find that in every industry, and I'm in sports and media, and there's so mm-hmm. many misconceptions where people are going to say something to me like, oh, I thought it was like this. And then I'm actually like, well, no, it's completely the opposite of this. That's not how it is at all. From your perspective, what are some of the misconceptions about the field of work that you work in? So I'll give you an example. We had Bob Clendenin, who is such an amazing actor. He's been in Cougar Town, Scrubs, so many different shows. Yeah. And he said that the biggest misconception was that there's this kind of breed of actors and actresses that he likes to refer to as kind of like middle-class actors and actresses that aren't really going to be like living the super glamorous life, but they get to work on really cool projects and have significant roles, but it's just like an everyday type thing. I mean, that was the one I find interesting. And then there's the other ones where Shauna Hammock, who played CO Ginger, said that mm-hmm. people that have been doing it for doing this stuff for over like 10 years, they show up and it's like, oh, I've never seen this person. He's like a newcomer, but he's not because he's been around. I mean, similar to that, was there anything else like that you can kind of think of?
I mean, you know what? That's those two exact things. I was like, the minute you started to ask that question, I was like, oh, well, one, when you see people on these shows, people make an assumption that we're all, living the high life and flying first class. And don't get me wrong. We're very fortunate to mm-hmm. be able to do what we do and to make a living doing it. But the reality is that it's hard work, and our job really is auditioning. That's the job. Mm-hmm. They teach you that, they taught that to us in school. I studied at a studio called the William Esper Studio. And that was one of the first things they tell you is, one, if you're doing it for money, get out of this business because you'll be let down. And two, just remember that your job is not to be on that show. Your job is to audition for that show.
Yep.
And to do your best work in those auditions. And once I started getting a handle on that, man, when you get the job, it's just icing on the cake. But yes, that's one, is definitely like we work. We're constantly putting in the time and putting the effort. And yeah, some people get to that moment and you just cheer for them because it's how hard it is, which then leads to the next point, which she pointed out was that, man, it's amazing how often people think, oh, wow, that person's brand new to the scene because I just saw him in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out that, man, they've been doing it for 15 years, that they put in the time, they put in the effort. And, for instance, with me, when I got on season 4 of Orange, I had moved to New York in 2005 and I got my first job. I played like an EMT on the show Rescue Me. And those kind of jobs I would do here and there. That was it. And then, it took 8 years before I was even able to get an audition for a show like that, for a character that would be maybe returning. So I think they hit it. There's really no other misconception other than those two are the most prominent. I would say that.
Man,
people. I'll tell you a funny story. I was, if I'm not working on Orange, if I'm not booking something else, I need to do something. So I help out some buddies that own a little food shop in Brooklyn. And I was working one afternoon and this couple came in and the guy was kind of looking at me and he says, "And you look just like that guy from Orange is the New Black."
Oh, man.
And I said, I am that guy from Orange is the New Black. And it kind of, you could just see him try to register, like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, because, man, like, I got to work like everybody else. Got to pay my rent, got to pay my bills. And
oh, yeah.
And the other cool thing, what I like about it, and a lot of actors that have been doing this a long time would say this, is that it humbles you and it makes you remember why you're doing it. That you're not doing it to be famous. You're doing it because you like to tell stories. To your point, so we're just storytellers. So you do whatever you have to do to allow you to keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. It's funny because have you ever dabbled? Like, were you ever a wrestling fan growing up? Or
I was, man.
Yes.
I used to watch WWE. Like, oh yeah. And then in college, we would go. There was this bar. I went to school in Boulder, and we'd go to this one place, and they had all-you-can-eat wings Monday, and I think it was SmackDown was on Mondays.
Yeah. No, Raw. Monday Night Raw.
Raw, right. So we go watch Raw and just eat wings. Yeah, so I love wrestling.
Well, no, because that's the thing. The whole, like, wow, like, I've never seen this guy before. Like, Kevin Owens, who's from Montreal, where I'm born and raised, is like, he's been, like, working and wrestling for many years. He just broke out, like 3-4 years ago, and it was like, wow, I've never seen this guy before. Like, I remember seeing him, like.
That's a great analogy, man. That industry...
Oh,
what
man.
those guys, what they do, and it's funny. One of the writers from Orange for the first 4 seasons, Carly Mensch, started a show along with this young lady Liz, and they did Glow.
Oh, Glow! It's amazing. Glow is fantastic,
great? And I love that show because one of the things I really enjoyed was when they brought in the wrestler whose brothers were wrestlers.
Yeah,
and you see the amateur lifestyle that these wrestlers would live forever to get to that point, to then maybe get on one match on a WCW or back with WWE. You see these guys and you find out their backstory, man. Like, they've been wrestling for a decade, putting their bodies through chaos because they didn't have the training staffs that they get, at the pro. It's like being in the minor leagues of baseball and you make it to the show,
Dude, and you know what? Like, I've had the pleasure and honor of having a lot of wrestlers on my show, and to hear their story, like, the wrestlers have amazing stories. Like, we had Rob Van Dam's been on the show.
Oh, nice.
We've had Ken Shamrock, Jeff Jarrett. Man, like, to talk to these guys that I grew up watching, and I'm like, and hear their backstories, it's insane. Yeah. And when you mentioned about Glow, like, her brothers, like Machu Picchu's brothers, like, those guys are actually wrestlers. That's Brodus Clay and Carlito, right?
So then they get on TV. I mean, the meta of that whole thing was unbelievable. It's like, these guys have worked so long to get to a place where they're highlighted on the mat.
Oh, yeah.
To then get into a TV show in which one of the things is about them getting on a TV show. It was,
but that's an industry though, Mike, because I've interviewed a lot of indie wrestlers as well. This is an industry, like the wrestling industry is booming, because I've talked to independent wrestlers that say, I for now do not have to have a day job. I could just wrestle, because there's so many shows. Like there's been a big boom in wrestling. Like there's a lot of shows. It's awesome,
and they deserve it and they've earned it. You know, the like what we do is not what they do. Like we have the same ideas in terms of performance, but they put their bodies. You know, these guys are in the gym every day. Like they do specific things to put on a good show, but that includes taking shots and hurting yourself, and ACL injuries, things like that. You know, so they've earned that.
But it's also the lifestyle and the work schedule, man. Like the guys that work for the WWE, they're like nonstop.
Yeah, every night there's a show. Traveling, you know, especially when I'll see some of those documentaries about the amateur, like the guys that are working to get to that level, and to see like the trips that they have to take just to get to a gym that is, not, it's like maybe 400 people to watch, maybe, but it's like the passion. It's about the passion. They love doing it. And that's where I think we're similar. Is like we love being actors, so we're willing to do whatever it takes to do it.
Man, I could talk wrestling with you for days. But
yeah, dude.
Yeah, seriously, Mike, though, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out, man. It's cool, and it was cool to get to know your show, and good luck to you with this, man. I think it's awesome you're doing it.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. So now the floor is yours, or I would say the wrestling ring is yours. You're cutting a promo. What like promote? Like where can we follow you on social media? Anything else that you're allowed to talk about that you're working on? Because I understand a lot of times you're not allowed to, but just say what you're allowed to say.
I can't really tell you much about what I'm working on, but I can tell you, if you guys want to follow me on social media, on Instagram, I'm the big fella. It's one word, all lowercase. Twitter, I'm Mike Houston 2. I can't seem to own that name on any social platform. Yeah, and I have a Facebook page, Mike Houston. So follow me on those things. Instagram is definitely where I keep most of my entertainment work updated. Twitter is good. I try to get off it here and there because it gets a little crazy. But what I'm working on, like I said, I can't really talk about it, but let's just say it's still within the same realm.
Well, that's great. That's a great way of getting people to follow you, because you could be like, I can't talk about it, but if you follow me on social media, then you will see what I'm able to talk about. I will post about it.
Yeah, and I got some, a couple things coming up, but like one, let's put it this way. I'm going to be busy for a little while with a very similar, something you might have seen me in before.
Good. Okay. Absolutely. Seriously, Mike, thank you so much. And I wish you all the best, man.
Okay, you too, man. Talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, this has been Popternative. You can catch previous episodes, Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for the video episodes, and then Spotify, iTunes for the audio versions. Until next time, this is Mike Houston and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.